Greetings and welcome to the Manifested e-learning platform. Today we continue with the topic audit documentation. The subject is auditing and assurance. Our focus today is on the subtopic storage of working papers. Storage, working papers. We are going to see how working papers are maintained in an audit firm. And we will focus on three areas. That is the permanent audit file, the current audit file, and the auditor's notebook or the auditor's diary. Three things. And it's important as we begin to appreciate that in the context of audit documentation, working papers are systematically organized and stored to ensure easy retrieval, to ensure and also enhance efficiency and to comply with professional standards and regulatory requirements. That's why audit working papers have to be stored in a certain way. And this typically involves two main types of files: the permanent audit file and the current audit file, along with other supporting documentations like the auditor's notebook or the auditor's diary. So we focus on those three areas. Now let's begin with the storage of working papers in the permanent audit file. Permanent audit file. One, permanent file. Permanent audit file contains information of continuing relevance to the audit engagement across multiple years. So it is, as the name suggests, a file that contains information that is may be used for a long period of time, and this file is retained for the entire duration of the client's relationship because the contents are unlikely to change significantly from one audit to another audit. So that is a permanent audit file. And within this file, we have certain contents. So we are going to outline the contents. What are the contents? What is contained in a permanent audit file? Remember, at the back of your mind, the definition of a permanent audit file is that this file contains information of continuing relevance. This is long-term information that is unlikely to change over a long period of time. So what are the contents of the permanent audit file? The first content is client information. Client information. One, client information of the client. If you are an auditor, you will maintain a permanent audit file. Within this file, you will have the information of the company that you are auditing. The client information, like the engagement letter. The engagement letter is unlikely to change. All right. Engagement letter, that is the initial and significant renewal or amendment letters. The second client information is the client's legal name. Client's legal name. This could also be the client's address, the location, the address, the nature of the business, and so on. 3, history. The company. The history of the company is also part of the permanent audit file. The history of the company, that will be for the formation. When was the company formed? Are there any mergers, any acquisitions? That should be part of the history of the company. We also have organizational charts. The permanent audit file will also contain the organization chart, the organization chart, the key personnel, and their contacts. That is what may be contained in the client information section under the permanent audit file. Engagement letter, client's legal name, address, history of the company, organizational charts, and key personnel and contacts. So that's the first content of the permanent audit file. The second content is legal and statutory documents. Number 2, documents like the Memorandum of Association, the Articles of Association, and so on. Memorandum and Articles of Association. Memorandum of Association 1 and Articles of Association. That is these are legal statutory documents. Memorandum of Association, Articles of Association. You may have partnership agreements. Partnership agreements. Number 2, partnership agreements or deeds, trusts, and so on. If it's a partnership business, then you have the partnership agreement, which is also a legal and statutory document. Okay, and even copies of significant contracts, copies of significant contracts also form part of the legal and statutory documents. So the legal and statutory documents will have the Memorandum of Association, the Articles of Association, the partnership agreements or deeds, and also copies of significant contracts. That is the second content. The third content is accounting systems and policies. And accounting policies. Accounting systems and accounting policies also form part of the permanent audit file, like the general description of the accounting system and significant accounting policies. We may have flow charts or narratives of key internal control systems, like the sales control system, the purchases, the payroll that are relatively stable. We may also have internal control questionnaires as part of these accounting systems, internal control questionnaires, and many other things like evaluations that are updated periodically. So that is the third content of the permanent audit file. The other one is the audit planning information. For information is the other content, audit planning information. This would include summary of previous year's audit findings and significant recommendations. It may also include the prior year's management letters, the analysis of key financial ratios and trends over several years, and so on. We may have other information apart from these four. Other information that may be contained in the permanent audit file, which include copies of significant board minutes of lasting relevance, long-term minutes, copies of board minutes. We may have important legal correspondences, taxation history, and relevant tax assessments, and any other information that is used in future audits and understanding the client's long-term operations. So these are the contents of the permanent audit file. Let's move to the current audit file. Number 2, audit file. Now, what is a current audit file? At the back of your mind, remember that we've defined the permanent audit file. The permanent audit file, we said, is a file that contains information of continuing relevance to the audit engagement across multiple years. This is information that is likely not to change over the years. Then we have current audit file, which contains information and documentation specific to the current year's audit engagement. The information that is contained in the current audit file is information that is only relevant to the current year under audit, the current accounting period under audit. And it is created anew for each accounting period and typically retained for a specified period after the audit report is issued. This file, as much as is current, it has to be retained in the records for a period of not less than 5 years. But the information that is contained here is information that is only relevant to the current accounting year, financial accounting period, the year under audit. Okay? So what are the contents? Contents. What are the contents of the current audit file? What is contained in the current audit file? One is the annual audit file. Do you understand? First of all, the current audit file is just the annual audit file. It may also be referred to as annual audit file. It contains information that is relevant to the current financial accounting period. And this current audit file contains audit planning, the current year's audit plan. Current year's audit plan. Number one, current year's audit plan. Current year's audit. The current year's audit plan. The current year's audit plan and audit programs. Okay? Or let me group the way I did here. Let me have them in form of a group. Let me just say audit planning for, let me just call this audit planning. Under audit planning, we have first of all the current year's audit plan and audit programs. Audit plan and programs. That's the first information. The second information that is contained in a current audit file in relation to audit planning is the current year's materiality calculations. Current year's materiality calculations. Current year's materiality calculations. We have the updated risk assessments. 1, 2, 3. Updated risk assessments. We have the engagement letter for the current year. Letter for the current year is also part of the current audit file. Then we may also have understanding of the entity and its environment, the current. So that's the first content. The second content of the current audit file is the internal control documentation. Internal control documentation. This would include the updates to internal control descriptions and evaluations for the current year. It may include the results of tests of controls performed in the current year and so on. Then the fourth or the third content of the current audit file is what we call substantive testing documentation. Substantive testing documentation, like the lead schedules and supporting working papers for all financial statement accounts. We may have things like evidence of analytical procedures performed, the results of substantive testing of details. We could also have adjusting journal entries and so on. You understand? Yes. So that is the third content, substantive testing documentation. So when the auditor carries out the test, there has to be documentation for the test, what we are calling substantive testing documentation, which forms part of the current audit file. Number 4, we have what we call audit completion and reporting. And completion. Audit reporting and completion. We have also documents related to audit completion and reporting. like management representation letter for the current year. We have the minutes of meetings with management and those charged with governance related to the current audit. We have also summary of uncorrected misstatements. There could also be review notes and evidence of review or by senior audit staff. We may have final audit report signed and dated, and also communication with those charged with governance. For example, the communication in relation to significant deficiencies in internal controls, and so on. We may also have time budgets and actual time spent on the current audit. That also forms part of the current audit file. Now, the other content, currently as we've discussed, the permanent audit file, the current audit file, then there is the auditor's note. The auditors, number 3, the third content or form of storage of working papers is the auditor's diary or the auditor's notebook. The auditor's notebook or diary. Auditors or diary. Now, candidates, we are discussing storage of working papers, or what we call audit documentation. We've said these documents can be stored in a permanent audit file, in a current audit file, or it could just be the auditor's notebook. While it is not a formal file in the same structured sense as the permanent audit file and the current audit file, the auditor's notebook or diary serves as an important informal record-keeping tool, especially during fieldwork. So what are the contents of the auditor's diary? Content. What is contained in the auditor's notebook? One is daily activities. Daily activities. The auditor's daily activities. One, daily activities of the auditor. This is a record of daily tasks performed, hours worked, and progress made. We have also questions and queries questions and queries. This is just jotting down questions to ask the client staff or audit team members. Questions and queries. Number 3, observations. This is what the auditor sees with his eyes. Recording observations made during walkthroughs, during physical inspections, during client visits, and so on. Sometimes the auditor may be required to gather evidence through observation. So what is observed is then documented in the auditor's notebook. Number 4, discussions. This means brief notes from informal discussions with the client personnel or within the audit team regarding audit issues, or just explanations or follow-ups. Then we may have unexpected findings. And unexpected findings may also be recorded in the auditor's diary. Unexpected findings. This could be initial notes on unusual or unexpected items encountered during testing. 6 items. Action items. What are action items? This is just a running list of tasks to be completed or information to be obtained. Next, you have personal reminders. Personal reminders. Contained in the auditor's diary, there are also personal reminders. Reminders for the auditor regarding specific procedures or items to recheck. So these are 7 contents of auditor's notebook. And that's the end of our today's lesson, where we discussed storage of working papers. And these working papers are stored in the permanent audit file, the current audit file, and the auditor's diary. Yes. So that's the end of the lesson. We've done the definition of a permanent audit file. We've defined the current audit file. We've defined auditor's notebook. We've outlined the contents of each storage. Starting with the permanent audit file, the contents are 1. The client information. Client information. We recall that candidates, the permanent audit file contains information that is not likely to change in the current accounting period. It is information that is of continuing relevance to the audit engagement, and that would include client information, number 1. Number 2, we have legal and statutory documents. Number 3, accounting systems and policies. Number 4, audit planning information. Number 5, we have other information like board minutes. The current audit file, we define the current audit file as the file that contains information that is relevant to the current accounting period, and that includes the audit planning documentation, number 1. Number 2, internal controls documentation. Number 3, substantive testing documentation. Then number 4, documentation related to audit reporting and completion, like the auditor's report, the representation letters, and so on. Information may also be stored in the auditor's notebook, which we have defined as the auditor's diary. In this diary, the auditor records daily activities, questions and queries, observations made, discussions, unexpected findings, action items, and personal reminders. That's the end of our today's lesson. If you have any question, please, below this video, there is a comment section where you can post your questions, and all your questions will be answered. Bye-bye.